In the business world, it's pretty simple. You either evolve or you disappear. Every single day, companies are out there battling for market share, for efficiency. They're literally fighting for their survival.
And that phrase right there, cutthroat competition, it just nails the reality of the corporate world, doesn't it? So in this kind of environment, what's the game plan? What strategies can a business use to not just hang in there, but to actually come out on top?
So yeah, how do you get stronger when everyone's out to get you? Well, it turns out one of the most powerful moves in the entire corporate playbook is to just stop competing and instead start combining.
Now, we're not just talking about some simple handshake deal or a little partnership here. No, this is about a complete fundamental restructure where entire companies join forces. So you have to wonder, right? What's the real motivation behind a move that big?
It really all boils down to getting a strategic edge. Think about it. By joining forces, a company can instantly wipe a competitor off the map, grab a much bigger slice of the market, and get way more efficient thanks to what we call economies of scale. It's the ultimate stronger together play for sure.
Okay, but here's the thing. Not all of these so-called corporate marriages look the same. In fact, there are really 3 fundamental ways that companies can combine, and each one has a totally different strategic purpose. So let's break them down.
All right, first up, we have what's technically called an amalgamation. This is where 2 or more companies basically dissolve. They liquidate to form one single, brand new company. The key thing to remember here is that a totally new entity, our company C, is born from the ashes of the old ones.
The second play in the book is called absorption. And honestly, this is probably what most of us picture when we hear about a company takeover, right? You've got a bigger existing company that just buys up or absorbs a smaller one. So in this case, Company A is gone, and Company B just gets a whole lot bigger.
And then there's the third type, external reconstruction. This one has a super specific job. It's basically a lifeline for a company that's in deep financial trouble. A new corporate shell is created just to take over the struggling business and, completely reorganize all its debt and capital. It's a fresh start, sort of.
In this table here, it lays out the key differences perfectly. Just look at that objective row. You can see that amalgamation and absorption, they're usually about squashing the competition and just plain getting bigger. But external reconstruction, totally different goal. It's all about financial reorganization. Oh, and the number of companies involved tells a story too. For an amalgamation, you're creating a new company from at least 2 old ones, so you've got at least 3 separate entities in the mix.
Okay, so we've got the structure down. But beyond how the deal is structured, the nature of it is what's really, really important. And it all comes down to one crucial question. Is it a merger or is it a purchase? Now, you might hear the news throw these words around like they're the same thing, but trust me, in the world of accounting, they are worlds apart.
So here's the big takeaway on this. For any combination to be officially, legally, and financially called a merger, it has to be a true pooling of interests. The best way to think about it is, it's not a takeover, it's a partnership. And to prove it's a real partnership, the deal has to check off 5 very, very strict boxes.
And believe me, these conditions are totally non-negotiable. First, everything has to move over. All the assets, all the liabilities. Second, and this is huge, it's about the people. At least 90% of the selling company's shareholders have to agree to become shareholders in the new company. Third, they've got to be paid in stock, not cash. Why? To make sure they have skin in the game. And finally, the whole point has to be to continue the old business, not to strip it for parts. And you have to use the existing accounting values. Yeah, it's a really high bar to clear.
And here is the punchline. If a deal fails on even one of those 5 points, just one, it is not a merger. Period. By definition, it's then classified as an amalgamation in the nature of a purchase. And this isn't a guideline or a suggestion, it's the rule.
So what does this look like in the real world? Well, a merger is that true pooling of interests where everything just gets combined. But in a purchase, it's a different story. The acquiring company can pretty much pick and choose which assets it wants. Shareholders can be bought out with cash, and the accounting? Yeah, that's completely different too.
All right, so how do you even figure out the price tag for one of these monster deals? Whether it's a merger or a purchase, you got to put a number on it, right? And that price tag has a fancy technical name, purchase consideration.
Let's just bust that jargon right now. The transferee company, that's the buyer. The transferor company, that's the seller. Simple. So the purchase consideration is just the total value, whether it's in stock or cash or whatever, that the buyer gives to the seller's shareholders to get the company. And, of course, it's not like there's only one way to figure out this price. Nope, there are actually several established methods. It can be as simple as a fixed lump sum payment, or it can get way more complex, with calculations based on the net value of all the assets, or even the intrinsic value of the company's shares.
Okay, so we've covered the how and the how much. The last piece of this puzzle is how the new, combined company actually keeps score. How does it do the accounting for everything? And this right here is where that merger versus purchase distinction becomes absolutely crucial, because there are two totally different methods for keeping score.
For a true merger, you use something called the pooling of interest method. And the best analogy is like you're just combining two decks of cards. You literally just put them together as is using their existing book values. Easy enough? But for a purchase, you have to use the purchase method. And here, the buyer revalues every single asset and liability at its current fair market price. It's a total and complete reset.
And this leads to a concept I'm sure you've heard of, goodwill. So think about it. If the buying company pays more than the fair market value of the net assets it's getting, where does all that extra money go on the balance sheet? Well, it gets recorded as an intangible asset called goodwill. And that's meant to represent all the stuff you can't touch, like brand reputation or great customer relationships.
So, why did we just go through all this technical stuff? What's the point? Well, it's because understanding this playbook gives you the power to see what's really going on behind those glossy corporate press releases.
And here is the #1 real-world takeaway. The next time you hear a company call a deal a merger of equals, you can now step back and ask, is this a genuine pooling of interests, or is it just a takeover dressed up in friendly language? See, a merger implies a partnership. A purchase implies one company is now calling the shots. That language they use, it's always strategic.
And that right there is the question I want to leave you with. Now that you have this playbook, you can look right past the headlines. You can start asking the smart questions. Are shareholders getting paid in stock or cash? Is the old business actually continuing? Did a whole bunch of goodwill just magically appear on the balance sheet? Now you can see the real story.